I'm driving down Amboy Road on my way to meet the author William Hillyard at the world famous Palms Bar and Restaurant. And from there, we're going to head out and find an abandoned homestead and sit down and do our interview there. We're going to talk about his book, which is called Welcome to Wonder Valley, Ruin and Redemption in an American Galapagos. And I finished this book a couple months ago. It is amazing. One of the best books I've read in a long, long time. And William is a main character in the book. He found his way out here to Wonder Valley at kind of a tough time in his life. He ended up staying for 4 years, embedded with just some of incredible old school characters that are just surviving out here in these homestead cabins, no air conditioning, in the heat of the top of the summer, some of them no running water. It's an amazing collection of stories or collection of characters that he talks about. It's quite tragic at times, uplifting at other times. Just overall, I really loved it. William is back in town. He actually lives in Ireland now, and he is here for the 29 Palms Book Festival. I hope you enjoy the interview. All right, William Hillyard, thank you so much.
Thanks, Danny. Thanks
for sitting down with me here. You're the author of Welcome to Wonder Valley, Ruin and Redemption in American Galapagos. I loved this book. I read it. I've been finished with it a few months, and when it was recommended to me, I think it was the folks down at the Desert General Store who are doing the book fair that recommended it to me. And she said, it's a little dark here and there, but I just loved the detail and just, I just felt like I was there with you reading this book. And so for people that are unfamiliar with the book, give us just kind of the rundown of, kind of the synopsis and the background and the story of what it entails.
Right. Well, it all began when I came out to Wonder Valley. My parents moved to 29 Palms, which kind of gave me access to Wonder Valley. My wife is a geologist, and we've been coming through here for years. I was always very curious about what all these little cabins were, what's going on here. And so when my parents moved nearby, the old Hollywood video in 29 Palms, we went in to rent a video one day, and the bathroom was locked. And they said, no, it said out of order on it. They said, no, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that to keep the Wonder Valley people out, because they come in and fill up their water. And I thought, there are people living out in the desert. This was summertime with no water. And I wanted to know more about it. I wrote a story about a woman named Rika McGuire who died in an old school bus, died of the heat, and wanted to explore how she got to that place in her life. She was 62, 63 at the time when she passed away. And so from that kind of started my Wonder Valley journey, as it were. And I came out and I wanted to just meet people and understand how it is to live in a place like this, and that's how it began.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about the title. Particularly just kind of the thought process of the American Galapagos. Galapagos is a chain of islands, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So how does that relate?
Well, it was, my thoughts were, the Galapagos is where Charles Darwin wrote his Origin of Species, where he kind of developed the theory of evolution.
Yep.
But I was thinking that Wonder Valley is somewhat of a petri dish for the greater society as a whole. It's kind of, everything is smaller, compact, moves faster as, it's make or break here. If you're going to if you make a mistake here, it can be fatal, and it has.
Yeah.
I mean, I've known several people during my time writing this book that passed away because of the situation that they were in. And it seemed to me that the way kind of the United States was going, the divisiveness of the American culture, which kind of culminated with Donald Trump being elected, it seemed as though people were kind of almost different species.
Interesting.
And out here in Wonder Valley, I would say there were the retirees, which, as I say in my book, are the kind of the embodiment of the original homesteaders. They're the ones that kind of clear the land, kind of beat back nature, and they would be the ones that typically they have a pension. You know, they're on Social Security, whatever. They have some money, and they're kind of fighting back the forces of nature. Then you have the artists that would come to a place like this and see the kind of natural art in the detritus and kind of love the land and enjoy the beauty of it and find beauty where maybe other people wouldn't. Then the last group would be kind of the outcasts, the ones that are here because they had nowhere else to go.
Yeah. They
found themselves here. As I say, this was a vortex where they were shaken loose from society and rolled here. It was a low spot in the world, or in California anyway. And these groups kind of compete in a strange way. This is kind of the Serengeti plains of cultural, where there's different species and they compete, and they don't particularly like the retirees have disdain for the artists. They go, the hippies, as they would think of them. The artists kind of laugh at the retirees as being these old fuddy-duddies, and then they all kind of have disdain for the people that kind of live hand to mouth, any way that they can.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where the ruin and redemption idea of an American Galapagos came from. That this was kind of a microcosm of the American culture, where I saw it maybe heading.
Gotcha. Wonderful. Really, really interesting. How long were you here writing the book?
The book was about 4 years.
Okay.
In the writing.
Yeah. And what was the exact time frame year? What time years was that?
2013.
Okay.
I wrote the first. No, that's not true, because I was participating in the 2010 census. So it would have been 2010 when I wrote the first story. Then I worked the 2010 census. So over the next 4 years, I was kind of writing the material, and then kind of reshaping it and kind of decide. So I was out here up until 4 years ago.
Okay.
All the time.
Yeah.
But.
Gotcha. And when was the first year the book was published?
It's published 2019.
Okay.
2019. Yeah.
2019. Yeah. And we'll kind of maybe circle back to that. But even from 2019 to now is a pretty dramatic change probably out here.
Yeah.
Because that was, when I was reading the book, so much of it was current, the Palms restaurant and just things that seemed like, current activities. But I'm reading and I'm thinking, wow, it doesn't seem that wild out there. And I'm seeing, quite a bit more development and people moving out here. So that's kind of what I was curious. But it is interesting how quickly that time frame, because you probably weren't seeing much of that in 2017. I mean, you talk a little bit about it in the book, that there's some rental places, Airbnbs, starting to pop up, and some bands are coming out, and some vacationers for the weekend coming out to the desert to do mushrooms or watch sunsets and those kind of things. But it was kind of still, at that time, seemed like that was kind of the outskirts of it, and it was still kind of a fairly isolated group of people out here.
Isolated, and it was sort of discovered, I think, later, as people moved further and further east along Highway 62. Joshua Tree was kind of the epicenter of all hip and cool, and and it kind of, if you wanted to pursue something even cooler, something even edgier, you moved your way further east until you found Wonder Valley. And, and I think a lot of people came to Wonder Valley because they liked the edginess of it, and it's probably not edgy now. Certainly, I think COVID changed a lot.
Yeah.
People came to Wonder Valley because they could.
Yeah. So
I know for me, driving around Wonder Valley today, I kind of went and visited all the old places, and seeing a lot of them, all the old cabins that had been derelict for decades or fixed up, and some that were lived in are now derelict. You know, we went by one that a woman. It's not far from here. She fed coyotes and stuff, so it's always a good place to go if you want to see wildlife. And we went by today to see the coyotes because they'd come up to the car practically.
Wow.
And the doors were broken in, the trees were all dead. She obviously had passed away, and then so the people got into it, broke in, stole what they could steal, and it became one of these places.
Yeah.
Very, very quickly.
Yeah, and you'll have a better history for sure than I will to explain this. But again, you know, for people that aren't from this area, which you know, we hope that the YouTube channel and the podcast eventually reaches out to those people. Give us a little background of kind of the homesteading and these cabins, which I believe was like in the 50s that started, correct?
It was the Small Tract Homestead Act of 1938.
Oh, okay. Wow, even that far back.
So what happened was the federal government had all of this land, and they wanted to get it on the tax rolls. And so they decided this area was open to homesteading 3 times. One as large-scale 160-acre agricultural homesteads that failed because of the climate. Then they opened it 160-acre homesteads that you didn't have to have agriculture, and that failed because it was just too much.
Yeah.
So in 1938 they opened it to 5-acre tracts, recreational or recuperative. The thought was that World War I veterans had returned from the war. They thought, it was Dr. Lucky in 29 that thought that the dry desert air was good for lungs scorched by mustard gas.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of was the impetus originally, to give the land to veterans. And by the time the act was written, it was open to anyone. Anyone could. You paid $5 for a filing fee.
Wow.
And you got a square on a map. The map was just a blank page. They were rectangles, 330 feet by 660 feet, 5 acres. But you couldn't tell where it was, or no roads. It might have been at the top of a mountain. It could have been a cliff. You never know what you got. And then you were required to find your land and build a minimum of 190 square foot cabin.
Wow.
You had 5 years to do it.
Amazing.
And then the land was yours.
Gotcha. So we've seen it kind of go peaks and valleys a little bit, of people living out here and then desolation and then kind of building back again. And
right. So in 1938, the actual first homesteads were opened in 1941. World War II happened that year, and no one really started homesteading until the 50s after World War II, when kind of Gunsmoke and the Old West was kind of on everybody's mind. And so you could own a piece of the Wild West for $5. You know, you could just come out.
It's romantic and alluring. You know, I can
so
imagine.
in mid-50s, there was a 60,000 application backlog.
Wow.
People trying. Most people didn't, and this was not just Wonder Valley, but it would be all of this area. In fact, into Nevada. It wasn't successful except in kind of most successful along this Highway 62 corridor. It grew up, you know, 29 Palms, Yucca Valley, Joshua Tree kind of grew into towns. But because the water was so poor here, the water is considered non-beneficial use. It's very full of minerals. It's not good to drink. Doesn't have a use according to anybody really.
Yeah.
You take a shower with it, and you want to take a shower to wash it off. You know, and I think that's why it kind of collapsed. There's no real.
And that's, you know, that is just embedded in the history of Southern California and Los Angeles. It's always been about the water in Los Angeles, you know.
And that was the thing. Wonder Valley at one time had 4,000 cabins. When I did the census in 2010, there were 2,500 still standing. Only about half of those were inhabitable.
Yeah. What was it? I mean, you spent 4 years here, which is a long time. What was it about the area and about the people that got under your skin, that kept you here and kept you writing when, you know, in reading the book, it was sort of an uncertain time for you?
And that's
personally
a lot of it as well. I saw a lot of myself. I think a lot of it was, you there, but by the grace of God go I. I could see myself. At the time, I'd lost my job, but I had a bit of a cash stake, and I started investing in real estate. And I was flipping houses, made a lot of money very quickly. Got into one deal though that I put everything in, and then the market crashed, and I lost everything. And my wife and I lost everything. We lost $1 million in cash plus all the other assets.
Yeah.
And I mean, if I didn't have Anne, my wife, I would have been out here. I would have had nothing else. And so that's kind of what the idea was, that, Jesus, this could be me, And I wanted to see, because, I mean, the average age, when I did the census in 2010, the average person was age 52. The average person was a male, 52 years of age, single male, 52 years of age. So it was a bunch of guys. I was in my 40s when I started writing it, but that was me, That was me.
Yeah.
Guys that just zigged when they should have zagged and ended up with nothing and losing everything, and then getting by out here in the dirt and the dust and the heat, and building this kind of their own sort of culture, their own sort of society.
Yeah.
And I found that really just fascinating.
Yeah, me too. Have you kept in touch with some of the characters from the book?
Yeah.
Okay.
I spent today going around visiting some. A lot of them have passed away, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You don't live that long. Larkin McAllister, who I wrote about, I have a whole chapter about him. One of the most interesting men. I went to go visit his place just to see. Last time I saw him, he had a stroke, and he has indeed passed away since.
Okay.
And several of the others that I've written about have passed away. It's just not an easy place if you don't have running water and electricity. And
yeah, I can't. Living out here, I'm in town with all the modern, things, and even there, there's those times in the heat that you're like, wow, this could be tough. I can't imagine, doing it the way that some of these folks did.
I've known several people that have gotten their vehicles stuck, tried to walk out and died.
Yeah, we're sitting here, out here, and granted, the Palms restaurant is pretty close by. We're not too far out, from civilization, but it's part of, what I like about living out here is it is kind of still, the sign right over here, which I'll get on video, says the end of the world. And there's this element of it that it does feel that way in an extent. Like you're saying, I come out here and ride my motorcycles and stuff. And if you are not prepared when you head out into these hills, you can die very easily.
Yeah.
Part of that is what I like about the area. I feel like I like the edge of still being in a little rougher, undeveloped area where there still is that possibility of nature just dealing you a hand. And, and we all...
It is the edge.
Yeah.
And I mean, I always looked at it as sort of, this is the LA's Pluto.
Yes.
This is the end. Once you get past Wonder Valley, it is deep space. There's nothing else out there.
Right, until you get to Arizona, Colorado River.
But this is kind of the last satellite community of LA.
Yeah. It's amazing. But in a way, it seems, from when you're sitting here, LA seems like thousands of miles away, not, a 2-hour drive. It's really, what makes it so interesting is because of the proximity, we're still, close enough to LA that you get that artist community.
Yeah.
Obviously Joshua Tree is loaded with that, but 29 Palms is going crazy with cool stuff, and it's really expanded where you might not get that in other desert communities in other parts of the country.
Right.
That proximity to the film industry and just the entertainment and arts industry really put these two things kind of come together. You can
hold hands and stretch all the way there.
Yeah, right.
It's still part of that.
Yeah.
It's the furthest outreaches. But
Palm Springs is pretty close.
Yeah.
Right? Frank Sinatra's favorite place to live is pretty close by, in reality. So, the completion of the book for you, Was it kind of like we were talking about, you were going through a tough challenge in your life. Was the completion of that book kind of a turnaround point
The
for
whole
you?
thing was very cathartic for me. Not to give away the ending, but the ending was very tragic. Something very tragic happened in my life, one of my friends. And it kind of was a jolt at that point, how fleeting life could be, and I was experiencing it kind of as an outsider reporting on it and talking about it, but that was the hardest I've ever been hit in my life with someone that whose life was taken. I was on the phone when it happened, and it kind of was a jolt then that, this is, life is worth living. There's and it occurred to me at that time, and that I was always I always had a safety net, I had a wife with a good job, and a home, and she if I fell off the high wire, I wasn't going to die, was well able to pick myself back up.
Yeah.
But others out here don't have that still.
Right. That's a big difference. I mean, it's certainly something that I've always been really thankful for is, always having that support network. My mom is still with us, at 85, and she's not wealthy, but she's doing well. I've always kind of had that, I've been own my own businesses now for the last 20 years. And as much as I love that, there's still every day, no matter how good it seems, there's always that little thing of this could all go away tomorrow. I could be zero income overnight practically.
Yeah.
And, having somebody in your life that you're like, well, if that happens, I know I could regroup here. I'm not going to be on the street. I'm not going to be totally destitute. That, I think about not being in that situation, and it's scary.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I had a sense the whole time I was writing it that I was a bit of a disaster tourist. I didn't want, these people were living their lives.
Yeah.
This is real to them. And I was tried to be very conscious of the fact that, I can walk away any minute,
Yeah, sure.
And these guys, they're feeding me. They're giving me beer. We're hanging out.
A lot of beer.
A lot of beer. A lot of beer. And
those are some of my favorite, chapters in the story. Is just the what's the pizza guy?
Pizza Richard.
Pizza Richard, hanging out with Pizza Richard, just drinking beers in the cabin, and just amazing stories.
Yeah, it was really good time. So that green place is Pizza Richard's house there.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, he's moved there recently, probably 6 or 7 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Well, there we go. I just highly encourage everybody to read this book if they haven't. Just the detail and just the storytelling about somebody like Pizza Richard over there. You won't be sorry. It's an amazing book. I loved it. It's one of the best, my favorite books I've read in a long time.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Really great. Tell us about what you've been up to lately. I saw a post where, it said Baltimore, and I was like, oh, I lived in Baltimore for a little while. And then I was like, oh, this is Baltimore, Ireland. So what have you been up to?
So I live now in Baltimore, West Cork, County Cork, Ireland. It's the far west of, far southwest of Ireland.
Yeah.
In
Okay.
a little
I
village.
did have played a show in Cork.
Yeah. So this would be 2 hours.
Okay.
West of Cork. A tiny village of 320 people.
Wow.
And we, my wife and I, bought a pub there. So we bought it. We closed the deal 1 month before COVID. So we bought it, traded for a month. Then in Ireland it was a hard lockdown. We were only allowed to go 2 kilometers from 2 kilometer radius from our home, and there were police checkpoints to make sure you didn't.
Wow.
But it turned out to be really great. The people came out for us. The whole community
Wonderful.
kind of looked after us. And then a year and a half later, when things quieted down, we had remodeled the place. I had another friend to just help us just to hang out mostly, but to help us fix up our accommodation. We live above the shop.
Oh, okay.
And they COVID happened and they were stuck there for 9 months. They're very talented carpenters, and they transformed the place.
Yeah. Had you guys spent a decent amount of time there before you decided to?
My mother's Irish, so
Okay.
I have an Irish passport myself.
Okay.
So yeah, as a child, I was back and forth, and just decided we wanted to do something new.
Yeah.
I mentioned that Anne, my wife's a geologist, but her specialty would be water.
Oh, okay.
And she started to get very concerned with the water situation with climate change in California.
Yeah.
And she said, let's go someplace that it rains.
Yeah. How you liking Ireland, Anne? Love it. Very green. Very green.
Very green.
I think I kind of linked through your Instagram to an article in the newspaper in Ireland about the pub, and it sounded like you kind of remodeled it. They were saying it kind of had a California-style gastropub element to it.
Yeah. So
you brought the high-quality food.
we did. Yeah.
Of California, and I will say the U.S. in general, over to Ireland.
I'll stand by. We have the best tacos in Ireland.
Yeah,
hands down the best tacos in Ireland. It's fun because people will come in. Californians will come in and they will taste the food and they'll go, "Where are you from?"
Right.
Because it's here. We have San Diego style rolled tacos on the menu. Proper tacos, and then a great burger that's kind of loosely modeled. The sauce is modeled on kind of In-N-Out because we're during the pandemic. Ann and I were cooking the food we liked, and we were developing the menu based around that.
Wow, great.
And so it ended up being very, very California, kind of upscale California fast food. Really,
that's amazing. Well, it's great. Well, I'm real excited to hear that you're having great success over there with that, and things are going well for you guys. And I really can't thank you enough for sitting down out here and talking to me.
Oh, thank you, Dan.
It's a real honor.
Really is.
You're going to be at the 29 Palms Book Festival. That'll probably happen before this episode comes out, unless I can get it done real quick, but you'll be signing books and stuff. And I know you just flew in a day or two ago as well, so I know you're probably a little jet lagged and stuff. So thanks for taking me out here and finding this cool spot to do the interview. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Danny, thank you. Thanks. It was great. Had a good time.